Hello, everyone. Welcome to the March webinar from CDI Consulting titled Always Be Autofiling. My name is Michael Mathis. I am the Client Services Director here at CDI, and I will be your presenter for today's webinar. During today's webinar, we'll be learning how to build an autofile workflow to automatically file documents and maintain a standardized naming convention. Our webinar today will be built out using Laserfiche Cloud. However, all of this information in the webinar is applicable to self-hosted environments, and we do have screenshots throughout the presentation of the self-hosted environments. During today's webinar, if you do have any questions, please post them into the questions box at any time. After the presentation today, we will have a Q&A session where I will get to as many questions as I possibly can. If we run out of time during the Q&A, we will reply to all questions via email after the webinar. If you do need to get my attention at any time during the webinar, for example, if you can't hear my audio, please raise your hand at any time. And a couple tips for success during today's webinar. Take notes and screenshots to help you remember important topics later. Don't be afraid to ask questions. We always love hearing questions. Please complete our survey after the webinar completes. This will help us improve future webinars, and we're always excited to hear new ideas for different topics or how our attendees can get the most from these webinar experiences. And also remember, this webinar will be recorded and available on the CDI YouTube channel a day or two after the webinar. For today's process of autofiling workflows, our intended audience is Laserfiche administrators and workflow designers. If you're neither an administrator nor a designer, please stay in the webinar as this information will be useful for everyone. For the requirements for today's webinar, we are going to be using the Laserfiche Workflow Designer, the Laserfiche Workflow Administration Console, the Laserfiche Administration Console, and optionally we can configure an email server for sending automated email notifications. However, we will not be covering that during today's webinar. If you're following along today, we will need access to the Laserfiche repository, the Laserfiche Workflow Designer, and the Laserfiche Administration Console. For the scenario we'll be going through today, we're going to have documents being uploaded to Laserfiche, and they are going to need to be renamed and filed automatically. We have invoices that need to be filed by the year and the month. And all of our other documents, other than invoices, will be filed to the appropriate folder, along with the date in the name. We'll be using a handful of activities during the demo today. We'll be using the Retrieve Field Values activity to retrieve the template field information that is assigned to the document. We'll use the Move Document activity to move the document from the incoming scans folder to the appropriate location in the repository. The Rename Document activity is going to be used to ensure all of our documents follow the standardized naming convention that we define. And finally, the Conditional Decision activity is going to be used to determine, based on the metadata applied to the document, if it is an invoice or if it is an other document type. All right, so our agenda for today, we're going to get into our live demo, and finally we're going to review the configuration and answer any questions that we have. So let's move into our live demo. To get started, I have my Laserfiche Cloud administration page open. If you are using an on-premise environment, you will be accessing the Workflow Designer, Repository, and Administration console differently. To get started today, we are going to go into our repository administration and take a look at the documents template that we're going to be using for the demo today. So under metadata, we'll select templates and take a look at our documents template. The information we're gathering is going to be document type, the document date, which will pre-fill to the current date, and our client name. We will additionally be pulling the document, date processed, and type of the document. Okay, so let's get started building our workflow. Under Process Automation, we are going to select Workflows. And we will click the New button to design a new workflow. We'll name our workflow Always the Auto Filing. And we'll provide a short description and create our workflow. To get started, we are going to find our Retrieve Field Values activity to pull back the field information that has been applied to our documents. We are going to select our fields from the documents template, and we'll need the client name, the document date, and the document type. We will pull the field values from our starting entry. So our next step here will be to add in our conditional decision. So let's rename our retrieve field values to a shorter name. We'll be using this quite often. And under our conditional decision, we'll also rename our branches. We'll change this one to, well, let's call it invoice document type. And our other branch is going to be other document types. For the condition, on our invoice document type, we will edit our conditions to include the RFV retrieve field values, document type equals invoice, and select OK. Our other document types does not need a condition. If the condition on the branches preceding the last branch are not met, this last branch without a condition will then act as a catch-all branch. So next we are going to move our entry to the desired location. So we'll say move entry to invoice by date. Our action is going to be to move the entry. And our destination is going to be built out using tokens. So I'm going to open up our token dialog. Our document path is going to be client files. We are going to use the client name and file this into the document type folder. And next we're going to use our document date to build out our desired folder name for this date folder. If we click on our token, this will open up our formatting dialog where we can apply formatting to our token. So here we want our 4-digit year. For more information on formatting, there is the help documentation available, and this will provide you with the standard formattings available. We'll click OK here. After our date, we're going to add a hyphen, and we'll add in our document date field again. And this time we'll format our date to be the 2-digit month hyphen the 3-digit month abbreviation. Since this one is a little more complicated than just pulling the year, we'll test our token with today's date of March 10th, 2022, and click test. And we have the value 03-MAR. Perfect. So at this point, our document is moved to the invoice by date folder. And finally, we will rename our document to our desired name. So we'll change our activity name to rename invoice. Our new entry name is going to be, again, we'll open our token dialog. We're going to name this with our retrieve field values, document type, space hyphen space, client name. And we'll select OK. Now that we have our invoice document type done, let's implement our branch for all of our other document types. So again, first we're going to move our entry. So this will be move entry to doc type. Our destination, again, we'll use our token dialog for client files. We're going to file under the client name and then our document type. After moving our entry, we are going to, again, rename after the move. This will prevent funny things from happening with parenthesis 2, parenthesis 3 by moving the entry to where it needs to go before we rename it. Our standard naming convention here, using our token dialog, is going to be the document type, space hyphen space, our client name, space hyphen space, and our document date. Let's click OK to save the settings there. And at this point, we are done with our workflow, so we will publish this. So we've built just a basic autofile workflow with only 2 branches. Autofiling workflows can use any number of other activities available in Laserfiche workflow. We could look up information from a SQL table. We could pull information from a CRM or other product that we're using. The sky is the limit with Laserfiche workflow. Okay, so now that we have our workflow created, let's go under our starting events. And we will add a new starting event. Let's name this always be autofiling That's not how you spell filing. And this is going to be on a create event, which we'll get to on our next page. So when an entry is created in our Laserfiche repository, we're going to exclude our workflow user. And this option is going to exclude any actions performed by Laserfiche workflow from starting this workflow. That's really going to help prevent any runaway workflows where the workflow invokes itself and invokes itself and invokes itself and never stops. Under our starting conditions, if all of these entries are true, here we want to be fairly granular with our rules. Otherwise, again, the workflow could start when we don't want it to, and that could lead to unintended consequences. So first, we'll make sure that our template name equals documents. We want to add in another condition to make sure that our entry path equals our incoming scans folder. And we will add a condition to verify our entry type is a document. We'll move this entry type equals document to the top to help workflow filter out notifications more quickly. And next, we will make sure that this is going to invoke a workflow, our always be auto filing workflow, and this will run on the entry that was created. Next, we will publish and create. We're going to also create a second starting rule. We'll call this always be auto filing modified. So if the entry is changed in our repository, we'll make sure our entry type is a document. We will verify our entry template name equals documents. And the entry path is in the one incoming scans folder. That way, if the document is created without a template and the template is applied later, our workflow will still invoke. So we'll make sure our starting action is set, and next, and create. Now that we have our starting rules created, let's go into our Laserfiche repository, and we will give this a test to make sure it is all working correctly. So we'll go into our incoming scans folder. I'm going to import a sample file. And we want to apply the documents template to our document. Under the Fields tab, our document type is going to be an invoice using today's date, and our client is, we'll go with Johnny Appleseed, and import our document. So here we see sample 1 in our folder, and we also see the green icon above the refresh button indicating there are changes. We refresh, our document is gone. We go under Client Files, Johnny Appleseed's folder. We'll look in our Invoices folder, 2022-03 March. And there's the invoice that we had imported just now. And it is using our standardized naming convention. Everything looks good here. Okay, so let's pull in another document. And here I brought it into the folder that we're currently in, instead of to our incoming scans. If you were in last month's webinar, we covered creating import profiles. So we will use our auto-filing import profile that we have set up. So this will change the folder path to incoming scans and select our document template. Here I'm not going to generate pages. And under fields, we will fill in a document type of correspondence using today's date. And this is for Johnny Appleseed. If we import, our import is complete. If we go under our correspondence folder, we see our document imported with the appropriate naming convention into the correct folder. We could even pull in a document here for a different client using our import profile, since this imports to the one incoming scans folder and everything processes through there. So under fields, our document type will be reviews. And this can be for Brad Bartlett. We will import our file. If we go to Brad's folder, under reviews, here we have our document that we just imported. All right, that concludes our live demo portion of today's webinar. There are various resources available from Laserfiche as well as CDI for any additional information or questions you may have. We also have the contact information here for various departments here at CDI. If you do have any additional questions, please feel free to reach out and let us know. Thank you for attending today's webinar. Again, my name is Michael Mathis. I am the Client Services Director here at CDI. And at this point, we will open up the floor for any questions that anyone has. We have a question here for why there are two different starting rules for modified and for created. The reason we have those two starting rules is if we were to go into our incoming scans and pull in a document, and we're just going to click Save or Import with no template assigned. And someone else can deal with it later because I don't want to. Here, if we select our document, then modify our template with the appropriate, we'll call this a disciplinary file for Chris Anderson. And apply your field data, Chris. If we save this document now, that second starting rule is going to then take place because this is considered a change. and not a document creation. So if we refresh and go into Chris Anderson's disciplinary files, there it is. Apply your field data. There are also different events that we can select for these starting rules. So if we go back to process automation, under starting rules, we can create a new condition. Under conditions, there are various options for created, moved, copied, changed, deleted, restored, and finally document signed. So we can make our rules very granular, very, very specific. The next question we have is, can you share the link for the Cloud Workflow Designer? Yes, if you go to app.laserfiche.com, that will bring you to your homepage. I believe it will come to this page. As a reseller, I have a slightly different homepage. Yes, this is the homepage you will come to. From here, you can select Process Automation and select Workflow. To find your account ID number to sign in, you can reach out to your Laserfiche reseller, and they will have that information available for you. Right, do we have any other questions or concerns on anything today? All right, I don't see any raised hands or any new questions in the Q&A section. If you do think of any questions after the webinar, because that is when I always come up with all of my questions, please definitely reach out to your account manager here at CDI or to your Laserfiche reseller, and we will be happy to answer any questions that you have. Thank you for attending today's webinar, and enjoy the rest of your day.